And this is why if you go to before a meditation or a yoga session, they say, breathe, expanding the belly, take some deep breaths, expanding the belly.
Hi, and welcome to the Creative Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. Today's episode is brought to you by this week's guest, Lori Pieper of Journey to Inner Joy, where she guides women to live their life with clarity, passion, and joy. Learn more at journeytoinnerjoy.com. Lori is also part of the wonderful second annual Energy Medicine Solution Retreat that'll be taking place at the Kripalu Center October 1st through 4th. Save $300 when you register by August 8th using EARLYBIRD at checkout. Find out more at energymedicinesolution.com. Hey there, and welcome to the Creative Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. Thank you so much for being here. I want to introduce you to this week's guest, Lori Pieper. Lori's mission is to help every woman, and I'm sure men too, but every woman live her best life and greet each day with a smile and a spring in her step. Through her coaching and groundbreaking workshops, she blends the ancient wisdom of sages with the modern marvels of quantum physics. You know, that's catnip to me. Certified in total well-being coaching, Primordial Sound Meditation, also catnip to me, and perfect health by the Chopra Center, Lori is a Reiki Master, a ThetaHealer, and UWT, which stands for Universal White Time Healer, which I'm very excited to learn more about because didn't know what that was. Lori guides her clients to find their optimal path and achieve their best outcomes. Lori, thank you so much for being on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for allowing me to be on your podcast. I'm very
This,
excited.
oh, me too. Me too. This is exciting. So first and foremost, I need to just begin this whole thing and go, how did you get from being in corporate for all those years to transforming your whole life and becoming a master healer? What happened that you decided this was the path for you?
Well, I was in corporate for 40 years or so, and I loved my job most of the time. But as layoffs hit and those of us who were left behind had to pick up the pieces, it got to be very, very stressful, very,
Mm,
very stressful. And I found that I just was no longer that happy Lori.
mm,
And so, as a matter of fact, I even had, for the first time in my life, I had an anxiety attack where I literally could not touch my keyboard. Luckily, I was working from home at the time.
mm.
Um, I just couldn't do it anymore. I was so overwhelmed. And that's when I started. I had been reading books by Deepak Chopra, and I've always been spiritual. And I just started looking into it, thinking, I, I have to do something different or it's going to kill me. I
Mm.
mean, I really felt like I can't continue without having some kind of support. And so I found support through yoga, meditation, mindfulness, all that fun stuff.
I think it's so interesting that so many women, especially, got to kind of a breaking point. You know, there's something really profound to me about going, if I don't make a change now, there are going to be some dire consequences. And you get to that point, and for me personally, stress is the root of all evil. Like every physical issue I've ever had can just be attributed directly, other than accidents like I fell off my bike, everything can be contributed to stress. And so when I'm hearing you say you got to that point where you had a panic attack, to me, that's the stress in your life and on your psyche going, okay, if you don't slow down, I'm going to slow you down for you. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with stress and how managing that stress has helped you go from that place of panic attack back to happy Lori?
Oh, I could tell you stories and stories and stories. But I have to say, though, the one thing that when I was in the office, I was the tech in between who essentially was the go-between between the sales rep and the clients. And I would do the installations of the software and stuff like that. And it's it was it was amazing how some of them would want me to do their job when I was already had so much. And well, anyway, long story short, it came to the point where they were saying, watch out, you're going to get the look. And they were talking about me,
Hmm.
that look of get out of my office or you're going to die.
Wow.
Now, I'm not a violent person, so that would not have happened. But I did have, it was just, and then that's how I knew, because I'm like, that's not me. I'm not that person. I'm not that kind of person. So I had to make changes. And after learning meditation, I actually am a certified yoga instructor. I don't teach yoga because there's so many gifted instructors.
Mm.
But I love yoga. And after doing that for a while, um, my my colleagues and my family were like, what are you doing? You're so calm.
Mm.
And that's the real Lori. Um, yes, so anyway, I hopefully that answers your question. Like I said, I could go on and on all different
Oh,
kinds of ways.
and it's really interesting because for me, as I said, stress is the root of all my evil. And when I'm not stressed, everything is better. My outlook is better, but also my physical self is better. I can even tell you right now, I recently went to the doctor after I have been hypothyroid since my early 30s. I'm 57 now. And for the first time in well over 20 years, my thyroid was normal, no meds. My thyroid was normal. And it is because I am specifically making managing stress and not even managing stress, de-stressing such a priority. So that's
Yes.
why I'm talking to you about this in this way, because I know you understand this, but you're also working on not just stress, but joy from this
Mhm.
very, and I love this because it's this very, it's not binary. It's not an either or thing. It feels like a continuum from looking at stress and joy from all the way to the back, yoga, Tai Chi, 5,000 years old, all the way to what we can call modern quantum physics and quantum
Mhm.
mechanics. And you're looking at how do we manage stress? How do we evince joy in our lives in a way that feels good on the most basic and on the highest levels while navigating a very stressful existence because the stress is all around us. Can you talk a little bit about that blend and how you bring that to bear for
Yes.
yourself and your clients?
Yes. Actually, I have to tell you this story. When I was in seventh grade, I had a happy childhood. And when I was in seventh grade, I felt like odd man out because I was happy. And so many of my friends would spend the day whining and complaining about their family, their this going on, that going on, schoolwork. And I felt like I had to start complaining in order to fit in.
Hmm.
So so one part of the stress thing is I believe some people it's to fit in.
Hmm.
It's like they feel out. And I've talked to other people who feel like what's wrong with them because they're happy and all their friends are not. So I think the world and the expectations of modern society cause us to causes us to feel that stress because we're raised, work hard, work hard. You got to do this. You have to become a doctor, a lawyer, all these, you have to go to college because if you don't go to college, you're not going to get a good job. So all these stressors society's put on us. And I didn't even grow up in social media world, right? That's pretty recent in our history. And I cannot imagine the stress that our kids are going through because of social media. So the stressors, they're there all the time. And if we look to if we spend a moment, so words like mindfulness and mindset, they are overdone sometimes.
Mm.
And what happens, but what we do need to do is we do need to be aware of our thoughts, because we have now the numbers all change. Um, if you did a Google search, and how many thoughts does the average human have per day, you'd get a lot of different numbers. But I've seen anywhere from 60,000 to 90,000.
Mm.
Okay, well, but 85% of those are negative thoughts. Why are they negative thoughts? Were we raised to be negative? Maybe, maybe not. But the reality is, your brain's role is to keep you safe and alive. And how does it keep you safe? By pointing out all the dangers. So if you think about in prehistoric days, there was a lot of danger, right? Because they didn't have the homes and things that we do to keep predators out necessarily. But that saber-toothed tiger, they were always out looking for that saber-toothed tiger. Am I going to get eaten? Am I going to, or am I going to survive the day? It was all about survival. Well, that's our primitive brain. And that brain is still very, very active, keeping us safe and alive, but it also keeps us stuck. So, the number one thing that we can do is to pay attention to our thoughts. It's amazing if you just spend a moment, and this is what I love about meditation and, mindfulness as well. If you just pay attention to your thoughts, like people listening to this, if you pause the recording and just take a minute, close your eyes, and do nothing other than pay attention to the thoughts going on, you'd be amazed, because 85, typically 85 to 90% of them are negative, and that's to keep you safe, keep you alive. But when we're aware of this, we can also stop those negative thoughts, because the negative thoughts aren't, oh, where's that saber-toothed tiger? It's, oh, well, what is she going to say about me on social media? Well, what's going to happen if that gets out? Well, oh my gosh, he doesn't love me anymore. So things that are not a threat to our physical health. So the meditations, the mindfulness helps to settle our brain. It's not to stop the brain from thinking, but it's to settle the brain so that you can ignore the thoughts, let the thoughts go. Don't grab onto them. And because when we grab onto them, then we get angry, then we get worried, then we get fearful. And that's what's causing the stress. All of those things kick off the stress response to some degree. So I kind of rambled on there a little bit. So I'm going to pause and see if there's more clarity.
I think the thing that makes me go, about what you've just said is, yeah, I can see that some of those old stressors, like you say about, oh, is there a mastodon or a saber-toothed tiger around the corner? That's to me, what you're talking about there is fight, flight, or freeze. And what's interesting about that is, yeah, we haven't adapted to the hyperstimulation and the stressors of modern life. In other words, our technology has really grown, but we ourselves, the human animal, hasn't really grown that much as far as adaptation to the current stressors. And yet this is the life we're leading, right? Most of us have some access to some technology. Not all, certainly. There are parts of the world where technology is still very hard to come by, but most of us still have a fair amount of access to technology, so we're in it. And so I guess the thing that I wonder then is, what advice do you have? Because you're saying, mindfulness and meditation are overused, maybe even sometimes the words themselves. So then what techniques do you have for someone who is in that space of living a demanding life and needing to manage their stress, but maybe not sure where to begin?
Breathe.
Fair
It sounds
enough.
it sounds so simple, but if you think about it and pay attention when you're stressed, you end up breathing from your upper chest.
Mm-hmm.
When we want to breathe, and what that's doing physiologically, that is kicking off and keeping you in fight, flight, freeze. When we breathe consciously, well, even unconsciously, when we breathe by expanding the belly, and this is why if you go to before a meditation or a yoga session, they say, breathe, expanding the belly, take some deep breaths, expanding the belly. And the reason that's important is because the diaphragm pulls down when you are expanding your belly to take in a breath. And that is, I hate to use the word massaging the vagus nerve, but the vagus nerve is like become the big thing here. And it is a big thing for a reason. But that triggers when the diaphragm is pulled down, it it signals the vagus nerve to say, I'm safe. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're breathing from your belly and learn to do that even without having to think about it, you're going to be calmer throughout your day, regardless, because you are putting yourself into that rest and restore. When we're
Yeah.
not, I'll go
Mhm.
ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that absolutely. I'm a singer and I teach breathing and all of that, and the notion of getting into sort of what they call the parasympathetic nervous system is I'm no stranger to it, and yet again we go to this place, and I talk about this with all of my singing students, where when you need to get peace of mind quickly. I
Yes,
literally have a class out called Meditation for Busy People, because these meditation techniques that I teach are 5 minute meditation techniques, right? They're not sit down for 20 minutes because you might not have 20 minutes, but we need to
exactly.
do it quickly, right? We need to do it to in a place where we can sort of go, okay, I'm going to be present. I'm going to, as you said, massage the vagus nerve, which is great. I get it. But to me, the thing that I sort of keep coming back to is, how do we develop the awareness, the observational skills to note that we are getting into that place where we're going to need to breathe? It feels almost like it needs to come before then. You need to get to a place, or you have the opportunity to get to a place where you notice that the stress is about to ramp up so that you can head it off at the pass. What are the things that we can do as beings living in this very, very busy world with social media, with a lot of demands on us from our work, our families, ourselves, all of that? How do we develop the observational skills, the awareness to know it so that we can head it off before all of that stuff comes down and feels like anvils hitting our heads?
Meditation. I am a huge believer in meditation. I had read, I've been a Deepak Chopra fan for years. And in the 90s, I was reading actually books on tape, on cassette tape. That's
Oh,
how long
wow.
ago it was. Magical Mind, Magical Body. And in it, he talked a lot about meditation.
Hmm.
And so from that point on, I wanted to learn to meditate. The problem is the way meditation was being taught made it inaccessible to me. And for reasons, one, my brain doesn't clear, because the first instruction was clear your mind.
Hmm.
Well, the only way you're going to clear your mind is if you're dead. So don't try to clear your mind. The goal isn't to clear your mind.
Hmm.
It's to know that you're going to have thoughts, and that those just let them go. And so, and those thoughts are releasing stress. We look at it as, because we attach to them. And when we attach to those thoughts, we start going down a rabbit hole. Oh gosh, I forgot to call my boss. I forgot. Oh gosh, I forgot to do laundry. And we get attached to them. But if we can treat them like a river just flowing by or clouds in the sky, that they're there, yeah, but I'm not reaching out and grabbing them. It takes practice. So when I finally learned primordial sound meditation, where the instruction, and actually became an instructor, the instruction for that meditation helps you to understand how to quote unquote do it right, and how to not get caught up in things that, like, you have to sit in a certain way, you have to have a certain music, you have to, no, throw the rules out. The biggest thing is to sit quietly and repeat a mantra, or you have some point of focus. And every time a thought comes, and it will come back to the point of focus, which could be a bug on the wall. It doesn't have to be a mantra, it doesn't have to be anything special. And that's, I mean, so it is easy. So that does help us to stay calmer throughout the day, just by going to that place of silence. Deepak was asked once, what's the difference between meditation and prayer? And his answer, very wise answer, of course, was prayer is talking to God. Meditation is listening to God. So the more we can be in that space of quiet, the more we're training ourselves to be in that space of quiet throughout the day, which keeps us calmer and less stressed. But also, we're hearing, whether you call it God, the universe, you're hearing your heart and soul speak to you. And that's what's going to keep you. The more we can get out of our heads and into our heart and soul, the calmer we're going to be, the better our life's going to be. Just, it sounds simple. It is simple.
Respectfully, I disagree that it's simple.
Yeah, I know. Once you get into the habit, it's, yeah.
Because no, the reason I say that, for, like you said, you had a happy childhood, which good on you. I did not. I had the opposite of a happy childhood. And so, and I don't know which is more sort of happens more often. Are people mostly happy children, or are they mostly not happy children? I don't know. And the thing is, though, that, I think it depends on the personality of the person, how easily they're able to navigate some of this. And with Deepak Chopra's, to me, meditation is always about beginner's mind as much as possible, and not to have a lot of judgment around what insights I get as I meditate. And I write them all down, and often post them on social media, actually, because often they're things that my students and the people who follow me on social like hearing about, like what did Isolde meditate on today? And so there is this, to me, there's a universality at work here. And what I'm wondering about, because you said, it's easy. And to me, this has been a hard won battle, right? Lots of Tai Chi, lots of yoga, lots of learning how to meditate, because I have a very busy mind. But once you get to that place, once you get to a place where maybe it's not easy, but at least you're more heart centered and you're not in your head so much. The thing that I come to is, I believe in something that I've developed. It's called the doorway path. And the thing about this is, once you get to the next doorway, you're at a crossroads. And some of the stuff that happens at some of these doorways looks to the outside eye like they're miracles, like they're just, wow, that I'm going to use another overused word, the synergy there, the serendipity there. Wow, I can't believe that all happened. But you're someone who actually believes in sort of manifestation and bringing to you the things that you envision. And I'd love to talk a little bit about that part. Like, once you get to a place where you're more heart centered, where you're more available to and receptive to what we could call the miraculous. Can you talk a little bit about how this practice might work in someone's real life and what steps someone could take to start manifesting their own miracles?
I actually wrote a 3-part article in the On Purpose Woman magazine, Miracles Are Real. And the 3 parts were, one, how to, how to set the intention and manifest. And part 2, I think part 2 was when it doesn't go right. And I forget what the 3rd part was, but it was really, really good. um,
We'll have to put a link to that in the show notes.
okay. But the first time I recognized manifesting a miracle, and what I call a miracle is when our brains are limited in the possibilities, whereas the heart and soul has more of a universal look at what can happen.
Mm.
So, my first example, again, it goes back to work. I was working at corporate. I really liked the company I worked for. But the job was just getting to be too much. I had just purchased a house, a little above my means. I like to do that so I don't spend frivolously on things like t-shirts and silly stuff.
Mhm.
So, and I always anticipate that I'm going to get a raise and things like that. Um, so anyway, I needed to have a similar income. I wanted to work for the same company. But the jobs, when I went out and looked at the job postings, none of them were less stressful, because that was a big thing. I wanted something with less stress. I was done with the crazy hours and traveling all the time, and honestly, just dealing with some of the stuff, when you are the go between the sales rep and the client. And my intention was, so I always set a positive intention before I meditate. And the intention was, I want a new job with less stress, with the same company, and with a similar salary. I couldn't find it. I could not even begin to think about what that would be. And one morning when I was meditating, a word, like, thoughts come up, a thought came up: I am teacher. Let it go, right? That's what you do when you're in the meditative state. You let it go. You don't focus on it and try to analyze it. What does this mean? What does this mean? I let it go. I wasn't in the office more than 2 hours when a friend of mine from corporate called me and said, I have an opening in the education department. And let me tell you, at that point, that was my dream job. That to me was manifesting the miracle I needed, because I never would have looked on the education site, because my brain would have said, they're not going to pay you that kind of salary.
Mm.
And that was just one of many. Actually, I should say, I actually had, I wouldn't call this a miracle, but things that pop up when I was deciding whether or not to build my house, because it was a little more than I wanted to spend, um, in a dream. It just came to me, that's your lot. And I listen to those. So when they pop up, I listen to them and I act on them. And it's not always going to work for you, but if something like that comes up and it's not working, then I believe God, the universe, is teaching me something. What does it teach me? If I want to get from A to B, there may be an A and a half somewhere in between, something that I need to learn in between there in order to be my best self when I get to my end point. if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. Absolutely. And again, we come back to that notion of awareness of being in a state of receptivity to listen to the messages that we're getting, whatever those messages are. But this is what's interesting to me about our conversation right now is that you have these various modalities that you practice, and a lot of them go back to be aware, be present, meditate, listen, be receptive, which is great. But you've got a ton of different tools in your toolbox. So in that state, when you're working with clients, for example, you need to be as their coach or as their architect of joy, which I love that that's your title. You need to know what is the appropriate way to work with them, which modality do I need to use to give my client the best outcome. So, how do you determine which approach is best suited for each of your clients? And do you have any examples of sort of a personalized healing journey that you could share?
Yes. So are you talking about a healing journey for me or a healing journey for my client?
Well, for you, if you'd like, but the thing that I mean, let's be very honest here. When you come on a podcast, you're going to be talking about sort of the benefits that you bring to the people you work with, because we are trying to spread the word of meditation and spread the word of sound healing and all of this. So if you have anything, and I don't want to, obviously nothing private, but if you're working with a client who's coming to you and says, I'm very stressed, and you say, okay, first breathe, and they're like, I've tried breathing. Okay, meditate. I've tried meditating and I'm still very stressed. How would you decide which modality to work with them best? And if you have any examples, I'd love it if you'd share one. But if you don't, that's totally cool. I'd love to hear how you would go, okay, with you. Like I'll give you an example. One of the things that I do with my coaching clients is I do we'll call it intuitive journeys, insightful coaching, because I do tarot readings, crystal readings, palm readings. And some people want a very specific question answered and a specific insight, and some people want sort of more grand lifelong insight. Well, if you want a specific question answered, we're going to look at tarot. If you want more, let's look at lifelong processes, we're going to look at your palm. If you want to get to the heart of the matter, we're going to have you do crystals. So for you, when you're doing this work with your clients, you're at some point going to go, this is what's appropriate for them. How do you make that decision? And how do you introduce your clients to a modality that they may never heard of?
Um, well, first of all, I was raised not to toot my own horn, so I have a really hard time doing that.
Toot that horn, toot it.
um, okay, well, I do have a couple of programs. One is the Amazing You workshop, but I want to talk about my coaching clients
Mm-hmm.
because one thing I do is I teach them primordial sound meditation. Even if it's just the basics, because it's actually about the full day course.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to get them in the habit of meditating, even if it's just 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes in the afternoon, just to start getting used to the silence and being in that place of silence. Again, it's like exercising. You don't run a marathon. You don't decide to run a marathon and then run a marathon the next day. You have to work up to it, right?
Sure.
Um, I also use Ayurveda, and a lot of people are not familiar with Ayurveda. It is India. It actually stands for science or knowledge of life.
Mm.
And it is India's individualized medical system from 5,000 years ago. And there is a little quiz that I will send them. And this helps me to understand what who they are naturally, like their natural being,
Mm-hmm.
and who, what kind of imbalance is going on. because oftentimes when I talk to someone before they become a client of mine, they're not necessarily getting to the heart of things. They might have a goal. I worked with a client. She had a goal trying to make a decision. Do I quit work and go back to school and blah, 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 which yes, I absolutely helped her with. But in that process of these coaching sessions, other things bubbled up. Things like she wanted to declutter her house, but there was a block. So we went through a couple exercises to help her to understand why there was a blockage.
Mm-hmm.
And one of it was when she was being punished as a child, she was told to go up to her room and clean it.
Mm.
So, these things come up in the conversation. And as a coach, I ask questions and then I listen. But things like meditation are always very helpful. The Ayurveda, I pull things from Ayurveda. There were several questionnaires. So if there's a block in that, and I'm not even sure, what's happening, what's going on, then there are a couple questionnaires I can use and dig in deeper. So
Mm-hmm.
as I'm digging in deeper, what is it, like the 7 layers of why, which is really hard to do, but the 7 layers of why really gets, when you get to about the fifth, you start to get really uncomfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's the place where you need to be to get these answers. And sometimes it's just, hey, let's just chill, let's just do a Reiki session, because right now you're in a place where your brain's going in a million different places and your body's responding in a not so good way. Let's just dial it down. So I do bring it all in,
Mm-hmm.
and it really is just about, I guess it's some of the intuition I get from my client and from what they're telling me, from, yeah, what they're saying, how they look. um it's hard to describe, and I think that's why I have a hard time with tooting my own horn, because a lot of it is intuitive, and then I just pull in. One of my clients wanted to drink more water, but she hates cold water, and from the Ayurveda quiz, I knew she's a Kapha dosha, and Kapha shouldn't have cold water. They should have warm tea. She started drinking herbal teas, and she's now getting the water, caffeine free. Now she's getting the liquids that she needs. So I bring it all in. There's no one way, and it's kind of intuitive and how I do it.
This episode is brought to you by Lori Pieper of Journey to Inner Joy. Learn more at journeytoinnerjoy.com. That makes a lot of sense to me. I do it very similarly, and it's sort of each situation is going to present itself, and then you have to stay aware and evaluate quickly, and then figure out what would be the best path forward. But you
Yes.
mentioned something that I'm kind of going, let's talk about this, because this is something, you're a Reiki master and you're a Theta healer, and UWT, as we talked about earlier. But a lot of people have misconceptions about what those are and what they do, and energy healing in general. There's a lot of poo-pooing of it, even though I know the Baltimore Sun did a newspaper article on Reiki being used at, I believe it was Johns Hopkins. They were doing Reiki pre and post-op on patients, and they just noticed that healing was better, coming out of anesthesia was easier, all of these things. So, there's some scientific sort of basis for all of this, that you can go, yeah, there have been studies on this, it does work, blah, 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 but people still have misconceptions. So I was wondering, what are some of those misconceptions that you've come up against with energy healing in general? And how do you educate people to see the potential of these various modalities?
It's interesting you talk about Reiki, because that Reiki is very misunderstood. It's based in, its origins are in Japan, and it started as a spiritual practice with a side benefit of healing. And when it came to the West, it was dumbed down literally, and there were so many myths attached to it. So I first learned Reiki when I lived in Australia in the early 2000s, and the rules were things like you can't wear jewelry when having a Reiki session. I mean, I couldn't wear my belt. There were all these rules,
Mm-hmm.
and my scientific mind, even though I wasn't really reading that much into like the modern day physics at that time, was like, why would that make sense? It's energy. It's
Mm-hmm.
energy healing. Now she did a fabulous job, but there were things that just didn't set right with me until I took a Reiki training course in the manner of the original Japanese method of teaching, where we're taught to be spirit first. So a couple things when we're spirit, and let me just say, when you're feeling that spirituality, I liken that to heart. Your
Mm-hmm.
heart is more open. You are connecting with someone at a deeper level than just having a conversation. So that connection, that energy helps. The way I like to put it is I provide an environment, a calm environment in which my client can relax. And from this place of relaxation, when we go back to stress, when you look at what stress is doing to your body and it's constricting those energy pathways that are keeping you healthy. So things like acupuncture and they're all energy healing. And all it's doing is allowing my client, to be in a relaxed state and let the energy flow. And you don't have to direct it. People say, well, direct the energy. And you can if it makes you feel better, but you don't have to. Set a positive intention. I work with a lot of when I do Reiki, I work with a lot of cancer patients and cancer survivors. And when I ask them to set an intention, a positive intention, a lot of times it's like, I don't want cancer anymore. Well, change it to be positive. I want to be healthy. I want to be completely healthy. And you can say cancer free, but also, and then bring in a vision of light. If it, the other thing, sometimes some people aren't visual, so they're like, I can't imagine the light. Okay, well, then don't. Just have the intention to accept any healing that comes your way. Our bodies are meant to heal themselves. They're designed to heal themselves, but our daily stressors, physiologically and even mentally, get in the way of us being healthy and happy. So having an hour or so where you just laying there, not having to do anything, not having to think about anything. Wow. I mean, people go to go have massages. That's great. That works. Reiki's the same thing, except you keep your clothes on and you're not getting pushed and prodded. That's the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I like that. You're not getting pushed and prodded. Uh, so I guess the thing that I'm thinking about in this is we're in a situation in today's society, the vast majority of us, I know you talk a lot working with women, but a lot of us are trying to balance our day-to-day responsibilities with our own sort of vitality and health and personal growth and joy and all of that. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on any advice you have to people who are struggling to find time. Like, I know you and I are both talking about you don't need to meditate for 20 minutes or an hour. You need a couple of minutes, just setting aside some time for yourself. But how do we do that in a way that we can do guilt free? Right. Because to me, I always think about it as an investment in myself. When I meditate, when I do yoga, it's an investment in me. But it was hard one for me to get to that because I am a fixer personality and a problem solver personality. And I always feel like I should be doing something or I feel like I'm not doing enough. That's my personal journey. And I'm sure I'm not alone out there, right? So when you're in that space and you're going, okay, I'm working with these people and I'm trying to help them get to a place where they feel deserving of taking time to care for themselves. How do you do that on a practical level with people who feel like they already don't have enough minutes in the day?
I can relate to exactly what you're saying. I remember early on in my career, taking time management courses. We
Mm,
had to for work so that you would not waste 1 minute of your day. No, no, no.
hmm
And things like relaxing were considered a waste of time. So I had to get over that. And when you look at physiologically what's going on in your body and brain when you are stressed, first of all, I like to say stress makes you stupid because physiologically, when you are stressed, the blood goes away from your rational, logical brain and goes into your reactionary brain. So if you're trying to make a wise decision for you, for your family, for your work, whatever it is, you do not want to be stressed. Think about the last time you were really mad at somebody or really worried about something and you said something stupid, something you didn't mean, or did something stupid. And and there are consequences to that. So the one thing is, I know this from my experience, I know this from my clients' experience, that even just 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes in the afternoon of meditation and and again, the primordial sound meditation provides you with a mantra that is specific to your birth date, location, and time. And the idea behind that is that it helps you to get to your true nature faster.
mm.
So it's a really nice mantra that is specific to you based upon where and when you were born. So a little bit of digression there. Even that 2 minutes, if you can manage your stress so that you're in rest and restore versus fight or flight, it's more than for just that 2 minutes. It gets folded into your day. And of course, the longer you meditate, the more benefit you get. But it's not like you sit there for 2 minutes and now the meditation is done and it's no longer helping you. It continues to work with you throughout the day. And guess what? I found this, others have found this. I actually get more done. When I'm meditating, when I'm doing my regular meditation, I get more done. And when I don't do my regular meditation, I find I'm wasting time or I'm making mistakes.
Hmm.
So if you truly want to maximize your time, meditation is a must.
And mic drop. That was great. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's fascinating because we tend to discount in many ways the very things that would help us because it's counterintuitive. Oh no, if I to be more productive, I have to do more things. Aha, maybe that's not true. And it sounds to me, Lori, like that's kind of what you're saying is that this little time spent, and I've said this to my own clients, this little time spent being in your own space and allowing yourself to just be can really prime you for seeing things more clearly and actually getting more productive rather than less. So I completely see your point, and I love that you said it that way. I could keep. I like have all of these questions. Honestly, Lori, we've barely gotten to. I have like eight more questions, but I know you have a day to get back to. So perhaps you will come back at a certain point and we'll get to the
I
rest of
would
these
love
questions.
to.
This is a fascinating conversation to me because, first of all, I'm glad that there's someone out there like you doing this work because I think it's so important. And uh, we don't tend to take that time for ourselves. So I'm glad that you're an advocate for taking the time for self-care in this way and also joy generation, which I think is great. And I think maybe that's going to be the name of my new ska band is Joy Generation. I would love to ask you if somebody wants to know more about you and more about how to find you, connect with you. Do you have any socials or website or anything like that that you can sort of talk about so that I'll put anything like that in the show notes as well. But I know people learn differently and they probably like to hear it as well.
Absolutely. The name of my company is Journey to Inner Joy. And the website is, as you might imagine, journeytoinnerjoy.com. You can email me directly. That's Lori, Lori, at journeytoinnerjoy.com. So very simple. You can look me up on Facebook, LinkedIn, look for Lori Pieper. So again, Lori, Piper is Pieper. Reach out. I would love to chat. I do have on my website a free, well, first of all, a free gift. So if you sign up, you will have access to my top 5 easiest stress busters. And one of those stress busters is laughter, people. Let's laugh a little bit more. And also, you can sign up for a free 30-minute chat with me. I would love to hear what's going on. As I mentioned, I don't toot my own horn, so I'm not one of those that's going to try and sell you and keep you on the phone until you give me $1 million, right? So it'll be very safe and just helping you and answering some questions and maybe giving you a few tips that can, yeah, maybe get you over some kind of block.
That's awesome. And I love the laughter. I'm married to a variety entertainer who was a clown in the circus. So I
Cool.
laugh a lot, and that is fabulous. Lori, thank you once again for being on the show and for giving that information. This is fabulous. I have just a couple more questions to ask. And these are questions that I ask every single person who comes on the show. And I know they're kind of silly, but I find that they can yield some profound answers. And the first question is, what is it that gets you out of bed every morning? And I don't mean your alarm.
That was going to be my first joking answer. Um, what gets me out of bed in the morning? I, gosh, doing what I do, and there's so many things that when I say doing what I do and serving others, there are so many things that come into play with regard to that. And I'm blessed that doing what I do could mean getting up, well, and doing my meditation, but it could mean, doing some research, which I love doing research about modern physics, quantum physics. And so, but just, I guess, an excitement for life.
Ooh, I love that. It's an excitement for getting to do what I'm going to do. See, and my joking answer to that it's not my alarm. It's my one of my cats likes to jump up when he's hungry and he starts eating my hair. So that gets me out of
I
bed
love cats.
very quickly. Yes, I do too. And the last question, again, silly question, but yields profound answers. The question is this: if you had an airplane, environmentally friendly, of course, that could skywrite anything for the whole world to see, what would you say?
Be joyful. Happiness comes and goes, but joy is always with you. And when you find it through mindfulness, meditation, however you find it, if you find it through your kids, whatever, just be joyful. It's your birthright.
I love that. That's fabulous. Yeah. Yeah. And isn't it nice to think in those terms, that it is our birthright to have joy? To me, birthright is all about existence and also using your voice and singing. To you, it is about finding that deep joy. And I love that. Lori, thank you once again for being on the show. I appreciate you and I really appreciate this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. And hopefully, people are getting some good information from this.
Ah, yeah, I'm sure they will. All righty. If you've been listening to this, you know you need to go find Lori Pieper and find out all about Journey to Inner Joy. Maybe get that 30-minute consultation and see what ways you can manage your stress and become more joyful. Until next time, this is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Creative Solutions Podcast, reminding you, as always, to be bold, be creative, and most of all, be kind. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. This episode was brought to you by this week's guest, Lori Pieper of Journey to Inner Joy, where she guides women to live their life with clarity, passion, and joy. Lori is also one of the facilitators at the Energy Medicine Solution Retreat at the Kripalu Center this October 1st through 4th. Save $300 when you register by August 8th, 2024, and use EARLYBIRD at checkout. Find out more at energymediциnesolution.com. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new, and it would mean the world to me if you told a friend about it. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2024. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always dream.